I'd like to share something with you that I call a process for surrender. And here's a printed copy of it. So, the process for surrender. What I want to do is I want to talk you through it. I want to explain what this is about. Simply put, this is a really simple approach to working on your self-awareness. So the idea is this. There are boxes, arrows, and then there's a diamond, all right? The diamond shape. Now, the boxes, that speaks to what you're supposed to do. And then this arrow speaks to the state that you're in or the awareness that you have. This diamond, this speaks to a question, so you have to answer the question. This would, in the business world, this would be called a process map. On the first box here, step 1, it says observe thoughts and feelings. Now this is how this works. So what you would do is you would observe the thought that's come up or the feeling that you have. So for example, you might have a thought about someone that did something and you might have a feeling that you don't like that. You might be angry at them, you might be frustrated, you might be sad, you might be hurt. You may be happy, you may be delighted, whatever the case may be. So then this arrow coming out of step 1, it says observed thought and or feeling. So now you've taken some time with step 1 to observe how you feel about what you thought or what's happened. So then step 2, the question is, how do I feel? And there are 2 answers. You either have, to the right here, it has negative feeling equals past conditioning. So you may have a negative feeling. You may feel upset, you may feel angry, hurt, or you may have, going down from this, good feeling, spirit. So that may be happiness, joy, peace, love. Now, if you have a negative feeling, then you go to step 3. If you have a good feeling, that's spirit, then you go to step 5. So let's walk through. So if we go and we have someone said something to us, we're then observing how we feel about that, and we decide, well, how do I feel? We answer that question, we go, well, I have a negative feeling. I feel angry. So then, that is a negative feeling, past conditioning, which really what that's saying, by the way, is that's the ego mind is surfacing and kicking up a feeling for you that is based on a false belief you have. So in step 3, it then says, stop immediately at this point and identify the fear or the conditioning that you have. So then you would ask yourself, well, what is it that I fear? If I'm angry at what they said, what do I fear? So you may realize, well, when they said this thing to me, maybe they criticized me. And what happened was that, well, when they criticized me, I bought into that. I agreed with them, subconsciously or whatnot, that, well, I was worthy of criticizing, that they were right to criticize me, and I may have agreed to that because I have a low sense of self-worth. I'm lacking in some self-esteem. So maybe the fear or the conditioning is that I am not worthy. So then, the outcome of step 3 is an identified false belief or conditioning. So beliefs like I am not worthy, or I have low self-esteem, I'm not loved, I hate my physical image, I'm very angry with the world, whatever they may be, there's some false belief that we have. And so then in step 4, we give spirit fear, or this conditioning, to exchange for love. And then it says in brackets affirmative prayer, or spiritual mind treatment. So, when we give spirit the fear to exchange for love, what this is saying is that you then take some time to say, well, if this person said this thing to me and they criticized me and I got angry, I got hurt, that is me having a false belief that I am not worthy, and thus therefore I agreed with their criticism of me, and I felt unhappy about that. I felt unhappy about that because there's something in the way. Now, that be a thing in the way would be a false belief of my lack of worthiness. We are worthy. You are worthy. Everyone is worthy. But we have conditioning through our life that convinces us to buy into certain beliefs, right? So what we do is at step 4, this is the important part. We stop and we immediately then go into our spiritual practice. Now it can be as simple as an affirmation where you say, Spirit, I give this false belief, this fear that I'm not worthy, I give this to you, Spirit, and I raise this shadow, I raise this darkness, I raise this fear, and I give this to you to exchange for love. Because this is not my truth, Spirit. Now, those of you who have a deeper spiritual practice, you might have spiritual practices such as affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment, which is a conversation that would take far more than a few minutes. Then you could break out your spiritual mind treatment, your affirmative prayer. But really at the heart of it, step 4 is just saying, Spirit, go into some meditation, find your center, and literally say to yourself, just say to Spirit, I give this fear, I give this shadow, I give this to you to exchange for love. And then the outcome of step 4 then is faith that situation is a means to learn what love is for. So simply put, what this is saying here is that this is a definition of faith. That's what faith is. Faith is a belief that every situation is a means to learn what love is for. You've had this situation that you've observed so that you could learn what love is for. You've had this experience. The cosmos has brought this to you. The universe has brought this to you so that you can reveal the love of who you are. You can reveal the truth of what and who you are. You are the divine in form. You are the universe learning about itself through your individual experience. And so when you connect with faith, is that belief that the situation is a means to learn what love is for. That is the outcome of giving it to Spirit. And then this next box is a black box. Spirit exchanges fear for love. Now this is deliberately a black box. You know how on airplanes you've ever heard when if an airplane has crashed and they say we're looking for the black box? And what that symbolizes to me is there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on in the black box. And I don't know what the details are. I just know that it's a black box. Well, this is how it is with Spirit. You know, there's a mystery at hand here. I know that this process works. I know when I give my fears, my false beliefs, my shadows, my whatever sense of separation or fear or lack, when I give that to Spirit and I say, Spirit, I give this to you in exchange for love. I know that happens. Now, I don't know how that happens. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know that there is this love. There's this manifestation that is greater and more powerful and more immense and more infinite than I could ever hope to put words to. So, I just drew a black box. There's a mystery inside that black box. But what the outcome of that black box is, Spirit's love, transformation, healing. And then step 5 is give thanks to Spirit. Now, if you remember a little earlier on, when we were at step 2, and we said, how do I feel? And I said, if you have a good feeling, well, that arrow goes straight down to give thanks to Spirit. So if you had a negative feeling, you're going to work all the way around this process here. If you had a good feeling, you're going to come straight down. And then no matter which path you take, you go all the way back to step 1. And thus it keeps going. So there's a few little notes for you here. You notice how it's like almost like an infinity symbol, you know, it looks a little bit like that. Now at the bottom there's an interesting point. What it says here is feeling system caveat. So what I've written here is the mind in which you are existing, has been so heavily conditioned into separation on top of your original separation experience that you cannot trust your feelings in the beginning of your journey to awakening to your spiritual magnificence. What does that mean? Well, you see, here's what happens. At least this is my experience. My experience is that when I was born, I had an original separation experience. I incarnated into this body so that I might work with whatever beliefs that my soul had. I needed to work through something karmically, whatever it may be. But I had an original separation experience where I forgot that I am a child of light. I forgot that I am God in form. And that's the original separation experience. Now, then I was born and I was this little baby and I needed to be fed and I had a diaper and I needed to sleep and I didn't have a very good way of communicating. So family then would try and interpret my needs through my screams and the conditioning began. because maybe when I just needed to be held and comforted, I was put into my crib and I was just expected to cry myself to sleep. And so I got this conditioning that when I felt lonely, I was abandoned in the crib. That's just one example. But then I got older and I started to engage with the world, and then I started to have a more direct experience of what I would call the 4 pillars of conditioning. Pillar number 1, education. The education pillar of conditioning is teaching us about separation all the time. Now, there are many amazing educators in the world, but you know, the systems of education, they're not necessarily teaching us about our power. You know, I would love to see creativity as a core curriculum, for example. I'd love the idea of having emotional education, not just intellectual education. So that's just one example of how children aren't necessarily educated. And then we go into post-secondary education, and then we get, for example, graduate students working with quantum physics, working with broken axioms that are hundreds of years old, that are flawed. So you know what? Education is teaching separation a lot of the time. Number 2, media. So the media, when we're watching the television, when we're watching entertainment systems, conditioning us into separation, into violence. You only have to watch a violent movie to recognize the good guy is always forced to pick up a gun. You ever notice that? Always forced to go to violence, always forced to that last resort. And yeah, the good guy wins, but it always has to be violent. It always has to be painful. It always has to be terrifying, or at least a lot of the time. So I discern when it comes to the entertainment that I consume. A lot of violence, a lot of separation. And the media, the news channels, puppets of the corporate interests that are about separation, that are about convincing us that we need to buy to feel better, to then have a sense of better self-worth because we own more stuff. This is not a loving perspective. Corporations and the media are pillars of conditioning because they're seeking to convince you that you need to give the resources that you want to them to somehow buy your happiness. Number 3, politics. Wow. Need I say any more? You only have to look, for example, at what's going on within the US political arena right now. There's a lot of separation. And it's always a case of one party against another party. It's always a case of the values of either business interests, and then there's religion. And I don't know about you, but I think that there's been a lot of harm done in the name of religion, and I believe that's still going on right now. And as someone who's involved in a religious role, or I would say more from my perspective as a spiritual leader role, my heart does break. So, you know, from time to time I have little sighs of what's going on. But these pillars of conditioning are going on, and we're exposed to this. So the mind in which you are existing has been so heavily conditioned into separation, because what these pillars of conditioning have been doing is they have been trying to program you to cease believing in the power of your vibrational frequency. That as you think, so you create. There is a law of attraction, and you have this infinite creative power of the cosmos. If you would just believe in it, if you would just know it. Oh, beloved child of light. So there's been this conditioning that's going on. So when you first begin to awaken on this journey of awakening to your spiritual magnificence, when you first begin to, you've been programmed in your feeling system, by the way, which is a map to God, which is a map to the divine. Your feeling system has been reprogrammed and conditioned and distorted and crushed and trampled on, and you have to learn how to trust it. So some of the things that you can do, at least in the Centers for Spiritual Living, what we encourage people to do is when they're beginning their journey, book some time with a spiritual coach, a practitioner. Speak with someone who you are inspired by, who is walking their talk. When you look at their life, if you're looking at a spiritual leader, just look at how their life is unfolding. Because if they've got their finances in order, their relationships in order, their health is going on, and they are clearly loving their life and they're manifesting wonderful abundance and joy, then you know what, they've probably got something going on and they may be worth speaking to. And if when you speak with them and you enter into their sphere of influence and you feel good, you feel a sense of upliftment, being inspired, freedom, peace, whatever it may be, when you're around them, then that's your feeling system saying, yeah, you can probably trust this person to reflect truth to you as you begin to understand. So those of you who've seen this process for surrender, and you've looked at that bottom, this bottom bit, the feeling system caveat, and you've tried to interpret what that means, that's what that's about. So it's a 5-step process. Beautiful child of light. So what you can do, step 1, observe your thoughts and feelings. Then you have an observed thought and or feeling. You ask the question in step 2, how do I feel? If you've got a negative feeling, that's conditioning. Stop immediately in step 3 and identify that fear conditioning to the best of your ability. You don't have to get it perfect. Trust the spirit. Then you've got some identified false belief or conditioning. Step 4, you give spirit that fear to exchange for love. Go into affirmative prayer, go into meditation, go into contemplation, and you have then the faith that the situation is a means to learn what love is for. Then spirit exchanges this fear for love. You have spirit's love and transformation. And step 5, give thanks to spirit. And guess what? If you got to step 2 and you asked the question, how do I feel? You had a good feeling. That's spirit, baby. You know what? Just give thanks to spirit. Be in a mode of gratitude and continue. Love and blessings.